The dust storm rolled through the Arizona Territory on that sweltering August afternoon in 1882. And Zachary Logan had never expected to find anyone inside the weathered wooden church that sat at the edge of Hill City. When he pushed through its creaking door seeking shelter from the blistering wind and sand. But there she was, kneeling in the front pew, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white, whispering words so fervent he could hear the desperation in them, even from where he stood dripping sweat and covered in trail dust. He removed his hat instinctively, his boots making the old floorboards groan despite his attempt to step quietly. The woman's voice faltered, and she turned, her eyes wide with surprise. They were the color of amber in sunlight, he noticed, and rimmed with red from crying. "I apologize, madam," Zachary said, his voice rough from hours of riding. "I did not mean to disturb your prayers. The storm was getting fierce, and I thought the church was empty." She wiped at her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself, but he could see her hands were shaking. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, wearing a simple cotton dress that had seen better days, patched at the elbows and faded from too many washings. But even in her distress, even with tear-stained cheeks, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest tighten. "It is all right," she said softly, her voice carrying a slight tremor. "I should not be taking up so much of God's time anyway. My prayers likely fall on deaf ears." Zachary moved closer, settling into a pew a respectful distance behind her. Outside, the wind howled against the church walls, sending sand scratching against the windows like 1,000 tiny fingernails. "I have always been told that God hears every prayer, madam." She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Then he has chosen not to answer mine for the past 3 months. I suppose I cannot blame him. What right do I have to ask for miracles? What kind of miracle are you looking for?" The question left his mouth before he could stop it, and he immediately regretted his forwardness. "Forgive me, that is none of my business." But she turned to face him fully now, as if studying him, taking in his dusty clothes, the gun belt at his hip, the weather-beaten face of a man who spent most of his life under the sun. "You are not from Hill City?" "No, madam. I am just passing through, heading to Tucson, got caught in this storm." "My name is Zara Bennett," she said, and he noticed how she sat up straighter, as if introducing herself properly gave her back some measure of dignity. "And my prayer is a simple one, I suppose. I need $200 by sundown, or I lose everything I have left in this world." Zachary felt his eyebrows raise. $200 was not a small sum. That is quite a specific prayer. "The bank does not care about anything except specific numbers and specific dates," Zara said, and the bitterness was back in her voice. "My father died 3 months ago. Pneumonia took him fast. He owned a small ranch just outside of town. Nothing grand, but it was ours. Except, I found out after he passed that he had taken a loan against it 2 years ago when the drought hit and the cattle were dying. He was trying to keep us afloat, trying to make sure we did not lose everything. And now the bank wants their money, and I have until 6 o'clock today to pay, or they take the ranch. Do you not have any family who could help? Brothers, uncles?" She shook her head. "My mother died when I was 12. I have no siblings, no aunts or uncles nearby. My father was a proud man who did not speak much about our troubles to others. Everyone in town thinks we were doing just fine. They did not know he was drowning in debt until the funeral was over and the bank came calling." Zachary leaned back against the hard wooden pew, his mind working. He had money saved, nearly $400 tucked in his saddlebags from years of careful work as a ranch foreman in Colorado. He was heading to Tucson to take a job managing a large cattle operation, a job that would finally give him the stability he had been seeking. But looking at this woman, at the desperation and determination mingled in her expression, at the way she held herself together even as her world crumbled, something in him shifted. "How much land does your ranch have?" Zara looked confused by the question. 160 acres. There is a house, a barn, some decent grazing land, and a water source that runs year-round. My father had started building it back up before he died. We have about 40 head of cattle, and they are healthy. And if you had the $200 today, the ranch would be yours free and clear. Yes, but I do not have $200, Mr. Logan. I have tried everything. I have sold almost everything of value we owned. I have asked everyone in town for work, for loans, for anything. But I am a woman alone, and people see that as a risk. They think I will fail anyway, so why help me? That is why I was here, praying for a miracle, for anything that might save my home. Zachary stood up and walked to where she sat. He pulled out his wallet from his inner vest pocket and counted out $200 in bills and coins, placing them carefully on the pew beside her. Zara stared at the money as if it were a snake that might bite her. "What are you doing?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Your prayer has been answered," Zachary said simply. "Take the money, pay the bank. I cannot take this from a stranger. I cannot take this at all." "How would I ever pay you back?" "I am not asking you to pay me back." Zara stood up quickly, backing away from the money as if it burned. "No, no, this is not right. I do not know you. You do not know me. Why would you do this?" "Maybe God did hear your prayer and decided I should be the answer," Zachary said, and he was surprised to find he meant it. "Maybe I am supposed to be here right now in this church, hearing what you need. But $200, it is your life savings, it must be." "I have enough," he said, which was true. "And you need it more than I do right now." Zara's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different from the desperate ones he had seen when he first entered. "I do not even know what to say. This is too much." "Say you will take it and save your ranch." She looked at the money again, then at him, her internal struggle clear on her face. "I cannot just take this without giving you something in return. That is not right. That is not how I was raised." Zachary considered this. "All right then. I will make you a deal. I give you the $200. In return, you give me a job on your ranch, room and board and a fair wage when you can afford it. I was going to Tucson to work on a big operation, but maybe working on a smaller ranch, helping build it up, that might suit me just fine." Zara's mouth opened in surprise. "You would give up a job in Tucson to work on my small ranch? That makes no sense." "Maybe it does not make sense to you, but it does to me," Zachary said. "I am tired of working for other people on their big operations. Maybe I want to be part of something smaller, something I can help build from the ground up. Your ranch sounds like it has potential. You said you have good grazing land and a year-round water source. That is more than many places have. You do not even know if I am capable of running a ranch." "Are you?" The question seemed to surprise her. She straightened her shoulders. "Yes, I grew up on that ranch. I know every inch of it. I know cattle, I know horses, I know the land. The only thing I did not know was how to come up with $200 in 3 months. Everything else I can do." "Then we have a deal," Zachary said, extending his hand. Zara looked at his hand for a long moment, and he could see her weighing everything, considering all the angles. Finally, she reached out and shook it, her grip firm despite her small hand. "We have a deal, Mr. Logan, but I want you to know I will pay you back that $200, even if it takes me years. And you will get fair wages as soon as the ranch starts turning a real profit." "I believe you," Zachary said, and realized he truly did. "We should go to the bank right now before they close, before they send someone to take possession of the property," Zara said, scooping up the money with trembling hands. "It is only 3 o'clock. We have time." They left the church together, stepping out into the tail end of the dust storm. The wind had died down considerably, leaving the air thick and hazy. Zachary's horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Tucker, was still tied where he had left him, looking annoyed but unharmed by the weather. They walked together down the main street of Hill City, a town that consisted of perhaps 30 buildings clustered along a single dusty road. The bank was a brick building, more substantial than most of the wooden structures around it, with iron bars on the windows and a sign that declared it the Hill City Savings and Loan. Inside, a thin man with spectacles and a severe expression looked up from his desk as they entered. His expression soured further when he saw Zara. "Miss Bennett," he said coldly, "I assume you are here to discuss the removal of your belongings from the property before we take possession at 6 o'clock. "Actually, Mr. Thornton, I am here to pay the loan in full," Zara said, and Zachary heard the satisfaction in her voice as she placed the money on the man's desk. Mr. Thornton's eyebrows shot up, and he looked between Zara and Zachary with obvious suspicion. "Where did you get this money?" "That is none of your concern," Zara said firmly. "What matters is that I have it and I am paying what is owed." The banker counted the money slowly twice, as if hoping to find it short. When he finished, he looked almost disappointed. "This is the full amount plus the interest owed." "Then you will provide me with a receipt showing the loan is paid in full, and you will return the deed to my property," Zara said, her voice steady and strong. Zachary felt a surge of admiration for her. This woman had been crying in desperation less than an hour ago, and now she stood before this dismissive banker with her head high and her voice unwavering. Mr. Thornton grumbled but complied, pulling out paperwork and filling it out with obvious reluctance. He retrieved the deed from a safe in the back room and stamped the papers showing the loan was satisfied. "Your property is clear, Miss Bennett," he said, sliding the documents across the desk. "I must say I am surprised. I was certain you would not be able to come up with the funds." "Then I suppose you underestimated me, Mr. Thornton," Zara said sweetly, gathering the papers carefully. "Good day to you." They left the bank together, and as soon as they were outside, Zara let out a breath that seemed to come from her toes. She leaned against the brick wall, clutching the papers to her chest. "I cannot believe that just happened. I cannot believe any of this is real." "It is real," Zachary said gently. "Your ranch is yours, free and clear." "Thanks to you," she said, looking up at him with those amber eyes. "Thanks to a stranger who walked into a church during a dust storm." "Thanks to God answering your prayer," Zachary corrected. "I was just the delivery method." Zara laughed, a real laugh this time, full and genuine. "My father used to say that God works in mysterious ways. I suppose he was right." She pushed off from the wall and looked at him seriously. "You really meant what you said about working on the ranch." "I really did." "Then we should head there now. It is about 5 miles outside of town. You can see what you have gotten yourself into." They walked to the livery stable where Zara had left her wagon and horse that morning. The wagon was old but sturdy, and the horse, a dappled gray mare named Rosie, looked well cared for despite the obvious signs of hard times. Zachary tied Tucker to the back of the wagon and climbed up onto the seat beside Zara. She took the reins with practiced ease and guided them out of town, heading west toward a line of low hills in the distance. As they rode, Zara told him about the ranch, about her father, about the life she had known before everything fell apart. Her father, Samuel Bennett, had been a good man, hardworking and honest. He had bought the land 20 years ago when Zara was just a baby, had built the house with his own hands, had raised cattle and horses, and had made a decent living. But the drought 2 years ago had been devastating, and rather than see his daughter go without, rather than lose the ranch entirely, he had taken the loan. He had planned to pay it back when things improved, but the pneumonia had taken him before he could make good on that plan. "He never told me about the loan," Zara said as the wagon bounced along the rutted road. "I think he was ashamed, or maybe he just did not want me to worry. But when he died and the bank came with their papers, I was blindsided. I had no idea we were in such trouble." "He was trying to protect you," Zachary said. "I know, but I wish he had told me. I would have helped. We could have figured something out together." She sighed. "But I cannot change the past. I can only try to make the future better." The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. It was nestled in a valley between two hills, with a decent-sized house made of wood and stone, a large barn that had seen better days but was still standing, and several corrals and outbuildings. Beyond the main buildings, Zachary could see cattle grazing in the distance, and the land rolled away in gentle slopes covered in grass that had turned golden in the late summer heat. A creek ran through the property, visible by the line of cottonwood trees that followed its path. "It is not much to look at right now," Zara said, and he could hear the defensiveness in her voice. "But it has good bones. The house is solid, the barn just needs some repairs, and the land is good." "It is beautiful," Zachary said honestly. "I have worked on ranches from Colorado to Texas, and I can see the potential here. You have water, grazing land, natural shelter from those hills. This is a good piece of property." Zara smiled, and it transformed her face. "You really think so?" "I know so." She guided the wagon up to the house and set the brake. Up close, Zachary could see that the house was indeed well built, with a wide porch across the front and real glass windows. The paint was peeling in places, and the porch steps needed repair, but those were minor issues. Zara climbed down from the wagon and he followed, taking a moment to look around properly. "Let me show you the barn and the rest of the property," Zara said, her earlier sadness replaced by a kind of excited energy. "Then we can discuss what needs to be done first." They spent the next hour walking the property as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. Zara showed him everything, pointing out the strengths and the weaknesses with an honest eye. The barn needed a new roof in places, several fence lines needed repair, and some of the outbuildings were in rough shape. But the cattle looked healthy, the water source was indeed year-round and strong, and the grazing land was extensive and good quality. "I have been doing what I can on my own," Zara said as they walked back toward the house. "But there is only so much one person can manage, especially when that person is also trying to earn money in town doing washing and mending for people." "You will not have to do it alone anymore," Zachary said. "We will get this place back in shape." Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. The evening sun cast a golden glow over everything, making her hair shine and her eyes seem to glow. "Why are you really doing this, Mr. Logan? And please do not say it is just because God sent you to answer my prayer. I want to know the real reason why a man would give up a good job in Tucson to work on a struggling ranch with a woman he just met." Zachary considered his answer carefully. "You believe in moments that change your life. Moments where you make a choice and everything shifts, I suppose. I have been working cattle ranches since I was 16 years old. I am 28 now. I have worked for other men, following their orders, helping them build their dreams, and I am good at it. That job in Tucson would have paid well, would have been stable. But when I walked into that church and saw you praying, when I heard what you were facing, something in me recognized a different kind of opportunity. Not just a job, but a chance to build something that matters, something I can be part of from the ground up. A chance to help someone who deserves help, who is willing to work for what they have." He paused. "And if I am being completely honest, In the few hours I have known you, I have seen more strength and determination than I have seen in most men I have worked with over the years. I think betting on you and this ranch is a better choice than taking that job in Tucson." Zara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That is quite possibly the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. It is just the truth. Please call me Zara. If we are going to be working together, we should use first names. Then you should call me Zachary." "Zachary," she repeated, and he liked the way his name sounded in her voice. "Let me show you where you will be staying." She led him to a small building behind the main house, a bunkhouse that her father had built years ago when he had employed ranch hands. It was simple but clean, with 2 beds, a small stove, a table and chairs, and a window that looked out toward the hills. Zara had clearly been keeping it maintained despite having no one living there. "It is not fancy, but it is comfortable," she said. "There are blankets in the chest, and I can bring you some supplies from the main house." "This is perfect," Zachary said, setting his saddlebags down on one of the beds. "Better than many places I have stayed over the years." "I will make us some supper," Zara said. "Come up to the house when you are settled." After she left, Zachary sat on the bed and wondered if he had just made the best decision of his life or the most foolish. He had given away a significant portion of his savings to a woman he had just met, had agreed to work for room and board on a struggling ranch instead of taking a well-paying job, and had completely altered his plans for the future. But as he looked out the window at the golden hills and thought about the determination in Zara's eyes, he found he did not regret it. Something about this felt right in a way that nothing had felt right in a long time. He unpacked his few belongings, washed up in the basin of water on the small table, and changed into a cleaner shirt before heading to the main house. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The front door was open, and he could smell something cooking inside. He knocked on the door frame, and Zara called for him to come in. The interior of the house was simple but warm. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace on one wall, a wood-burning stove for cooking, a table and chairs, and a few comfortable-looking pieces of furniture. Everything was clean and well-maintained, and he could see small touches that spoke of a woman's care. A vase of wildflowers on the table, curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt draped over the back of a chair. "I hope you like stew," Zara said from where she stood at the stove stirring a large pot. "It is simple fare but filling." "Stew sounds wonderful," Zachary said. "Can I help with anything? You can set the table if you like. Plates are in that cupboard and utensils in the drawer below." They worked together in comfortable silence, and soon they were sitting across from each other at the table, bowls of beef stew and thick slices of bread between them. The food was simple but good, and Zachary realized he had not eaten since breakfast that morning. "So tell me about yourself," Zara said as they ate. "Where are you from originally?" "Missouri," Zachary said. "Small farm outside of Springfield. My parents died when I was young, both taken by fever within a week of each other. I was 16. A neighbor took me in for a bit, but I did not want to be a burden, so I headed west looking for work. Found it on a ranch in Kansas, learned the trade, and have been working cattle ever since. No wife, no family, no wife. I came close once in Colorado, a woman named Sarah. But she wanted a man who would settle in town, work in a store or a bank, something respectable. She did not want a ranch hand who smelled like cattle and spent his days in the sun. When I would not give up ranch work, she married someone else." He shrugged. "It was for the best. We wanted different things." "I am sorry," Zara said softly. "Do not be. It was years ago, and she was right to marry someone who wanted the same life she did. I have no hard feelings about it." He took a bite of bread. What about you? Was there ever a man you were serious about? Zara smiled sadly. There was a boy when I was 18, Thomas Miller. He worked on a ranch to the north. We talked about getting married, about combining our family's properties someday. But then his family moved to California, and he went with them. He asked me to come, but my father's health was already starting to decline and I could not leave him. So Thomas went without me. Do you regret staying? No. My father needed me and I needed him. Thomas and I were young. I do not know if what we had would have lasted anyway. She looked at Zachary thoughtfully. It is strange how life works out. If my father had not died, if the bank had not demanded their money, I would never have been in that church today. And you would be on your way to Tucson right now instead of sitting in my kitchen eating stew. God works in mysterious ways, Zachary said, echoing what she had said earlier, and they both smiled. After dinner, Zachary helped Zara clean up, and then he excused himself to the bunkhouse. He was tired from the long day of riding and the emotional intensity of everything that had happened. As he lay in bed that night, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling around him, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the cottonwoods, the creak of the old bunkhouse, he felt a sense of peace he had not experienced in years. Tomorrow they would start the real work of rebuilding the ranch, but tonight, he just let himself rest in the knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next morning, Zachary woke before dawn, a habit ingrained by years of ranch work. He dressed quickly and headed outside to find the sky just beginning to lighten in the east. To his surprise, he saw lamplight in the main house and smoke coming from the chimney. Zara was already up. When he walked into the kitchen, she turned from the stove with a smile. I was wondering if you were an early riser. I have coffee ready and biscuits in the oven. How long have you been up? Zachary asked. Since about 4. Old habits. My father and I always started our days early. She poured him a cup of coffee, strong and black. I thought we could start by checking the cattle this morning, making sure none have wandered off or gotten into trouble. Then we can assess the most urgent repairs. They ate a quick breakfast of biscuits with honey and then saddled horses. Zara rode Rosie and Zachary rode Tucker. They spent the morning riding the property, checking fence lines and counting cattle. Zara knew every inch of the land and pointed out landmarks and problem areas with the confidence of someone who had grown up here. Zachary found himself impressed again by her knowledge and capability. She sat a horse well, handled herself with confidence, and clearly understood cattle and land management. We are missing about 3 head, Zara said as they finished their count. They probably wandered through that broken fence line on the eastern boundary. We should track them down before they get too far. They spent the next few hours following tracks and finally found the 3 missing cows in a ravine about a mile off the property. It took some effort to get them back through the rough terrain, but eventually they succeeded in driving them home and repairing the section of fence they had escaped through. By the time they returned to the ranch house, it was early afternoon, and both of them were hot, dusty, and tired. But there was also a sense of satisfaction in having accomplished something concrete. You are good at this, Zara said as they unsaddled the horses. Really good. You know cattle, you know land, and you work hard without complaining. So do you, Zachary replied. You could run this ranch yourself if you just had a bit of help with the heavy work. That is the plan, Zara said, smiling. With you helping with the heavy work, of course. Over the following weeks, they fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning they would start early, working together on the endless list of tasks that needed attention. They repaired fence lines, fixed the barn roof, mended gates, and tended to the cattle. In the evenings, they would eat dinner together in the main house, talking about the day's work and planning for the next day. Sometimes they would sit on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set over the hills, sharing stories about their pasts, their dreams for the future. Zachary found himself looking forward to these evening conversations more and more. Zara was intelligent and funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard and made him laugh. She was also incredibly hardworking, never shying away from difficult tasks and always pulling her weight. But more than that, she had a kindness and warmth about her that drew him in. The way she cared for the animals, the way she talked about her father with love and respect, the way she treated Zachary with genuine friendship and appreciation, all of it made him admire her more each day. For her part, Zara found herself noticing things about Zachary that she had not noticed about any man before. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the deep timbre of his laugh, the gentle way he handled the horses, the quiet strength in everything he did. He was patient and kind, never talking down to her or treating her as less capable because she was a woman. He listened when she spoke, valued her opinions, and treated her as an equal partner in running the ranch. And more than once, she caught herself watching him as he worked, admiring the way he moved, the confidence in his bearing, the focus in his expression. One evening about 6 weeks after Zachary's arrival, they were sitting on the porch after dinner when Zara suddenly said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" Zachary asked, leaning back in his chair. "About expanding the herd. We have good grazing land that we are not using to capacity. If we bought another 20 head of cattle, we could increase our revenue significantly." "That is a good idea," Zachary agreed, "but cattle cost money." "I know, but I think I could get a small loan from the bank, now that the property is clear and we have been showing steady improvement. Mr. Thornton might be reluctant, but the numbers would speak for themselves." "We could also try selling some of the older horses," Zachary suggested. "I noticed you have about 6 horses that you are not really using. If we sold a few of those, that would give us some capital without needing a loan." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "That is a good point. There is a horse auction in Prescott next month. We could take 4 of the older horses there and see what we can get for them." "Prescott is about a 3-day ride from here," Zachary said. "We would need to plan for being gone nearly a week." "The cattle should be fine for a week if we make sure all the fences are secure before we leave," Zara said. "And this could be good for the ranch. We need to start thinking bigger if we want to really succeed." So they began planning for the trip to Prescott. Over the next few weeks, they worked to get everything in order. They repaired and reinforced every fence line on the property, stocked up on supplies, and selected the 4 horses they would take to auction. 2 days before they were set to leave, a rider appeared on the ranch, a young man with a badge pinned to his vest. "Good afternoon," he called out as Zachary and Zara walked from the barn to meet him. "I am looking for Miss Zara Bennett." "I am Zara Bennett," she said, her voice cautious. The young man tipped his hat. "I am Deputy Wilson from Hill City. I have a message for you from Mr. Thornton at the bank." Zara's expression darkened. "What does Mr. Thornton want?" "He asked me to inform you that Mr. Gerald Cooper has made an offer to purchase your property." "Mr. Thornton wanted you to know that Mr. Cooper is prepared to offer you $3,000 for the land, the buildings, and all livestock." Zachary felt Zara stiffen beside him. "My ranch is not for sale, Deputy Wilson. Please inform Mr. Thornton and Mr. Cooper of that fact." "Mr. Cooper was quite insistent," the deputy said uncomfortably. "He said to tell you that it is a generous offer, more than the property is worth, and that you should consider it carefully." "There is nothing to consider," Zara said firmly. "This ranch belonged to my father, and now it belongs to me. It is my home, and it is not for sale at any price. Is that clear enough?" "Yes, madam. I will relay your message." The deputy tipped his hat again and rode off, leaving them standing in the yard. "Who is Gerald Cooper?" Zachary asked. "He owns the largest ranch in the area, about 20 miles north of here," Zara said, her jaw tight with anger. "He has been trying to buy up smaller properties for years, consolidating land. He approached my father several times and my father always refused. I cannot believe he is trying again now, using the bank as his messenger. You think Thornton is working with Cooper? I would not be surprised. They are friends, or at least friendly business associates." She turned to look at Zachary, worry evident in her eyes. "What if they try to force me out somehow? What if they make trouble for us? Then we will deal with it," Zachary said calmly. "You own this land free and clear. They cannot force you to sell, no matter how much they want to." But the incident left both of them uneasy. That night, as they sat on the porch, Zara was quieter than usual, lost in thought. "My father used to say that Cooper was a man who always got what he wanted, one way or another," she finally said. "He would not tell me details, but I got the impression that Cooper had used some questionable methods in the past to acquire properties." "We will be careful," Zachary assured her, "and we will not let anyone intimidate us or push us around." 2 days later, they set out for Prescott with the 4 horses. The journey took them through varied terrain, from open desert to pine forests as they climbed into higher elevations. They camped under the stars each night, taking turns keeping watch over the horses. During the days as they traveled, they talked more than they ever had before. Something about being on the trail together, away from the daily demands of the ranch, created a different kind of intimacy. Zachary told her about his years of wandering, about the different ranches he had worked on, about the dreams he had let go of, and the new dreams that were forming. Zara told him about growing up on the ranch, about her mother who had been beautiful and kind, about her father who had been strict but loving. She told him about the loneliness she had felt after her father died, about the fear that had consumed her when she thought she would lose everything. "Meeting you in that church was the luckiest moment of my life," Zara said one evening as they sat by their campfire, the horses grazing nearby. "I know I have said thank you before, but I do not think you understand how close I was to giving up that day. If you had not walked in, if you had not offered to help, I do not know what I would have done." "You would have found a way," Zachary said. "You are stronger than you think. Maybe, but I am glad I did not have to find out." She looked at him across the firelight, her expression serious. "You have changed my life, Zachary Logan. I hope you know that." "You have changed mine too," he said quietly. "Before I met you, I was just drifting, taking jobs, but never really building anything. Now I feel like I am part of something that matters. You have given me that." Their eyes met and held, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing but had not yet been spoken. The moment stretched, charged with possibility, but then one of the horses whinnied, breaking the spell, and they both turned to check on the animals. They reached Prescott on the 3rd day, a bustling town of several thousand people nestled in the mountains. The horse auction was held in a large corral on the edge of town, and they arrived just in time to register their horses. The auction attracted buyers from all over the territory, ranchers looking for good stock at reasonable prices. Their horses sold well. The 4 older geldings were all healthy and well-trained, and they attracted competitive bidding. By the end of the auction, Zara had made nearly $400, more than she had hoped for. "This is wonderful," she said, clutching the money as they walked away from the corral. "This is enough to buy at least 15 head of good cattle, maybe more if we are smart about it." "There is a cattle auction tomorrow," Zachary said. "We should look at what is available, see if we can find some good breeding stock." They found a small hotel where they could get separate rooms and stabled Tucker and Rosie nearby. That evening, they had dinner at a restaurant, a rare treat after weeks of cooking on the ranch and camping on the trail. Zara had changed into a nicer dress she had brought in her pack, a dark blue cotton that brought out the color in her eyes. Zachary had cleaned up as well, shaving and putting on his best vest. They looked, he realized, like a couple out for the evening, and he found himself wishing that were actually true. As they ate, Zachary noticed several men in the restaurant glancing in their direction, their eyes lingering on Zara. One man in particular, well-dressed with slicked-back hair and an air of arrogance, kept staring. Finally, he stood up from his table and walked over to theirs. "Excuse me," he said, directing his attention solely to Zara and completely ignoring Zachary. "I could not help but notice you sitting here. My name is Richard Ashford, and I would be honored if you would allow me to buy you a drink." "No, thank you," Zara said politely but firmly. "I am having dinner with my friend." Ashford finally glanced at Zachary, his expression dismissive. "Surely your friend would not mind if you and I had a drink together." "Actually, I would mind," Zachary said, his voice level but with an edge to it. "The lady said no thank you." "That should be enough." Ashford's eyes narrowed. "I was not talking to you, Cowboy." "Well, I am talking to you," Zachary said, standing up. He was several inches taller than Ashford and broader in the shoulders. "The lady is not interested. Time for you to move along." For a moment it looked like Ashford might push the issue, but then he seemed to think better of it. He gave Zara a thin smile. "Another time, perhaps." He walked back to his table, shooting dark looks in their direction. "I am sorry about that," Zara said once Ashford was gone. "Some men cannot seem to understand the word no." "You handled it well," Zachary said, sitting back down. But inside, he was surprised by the surge of jealousy and protectiveness he had felt. The thought of another man trying to take Zara's attention had made him want to do more than just tell the man to leave. He had wanted to make it clear that Zara was his, which was ridiculous because she was not his. She was his employer, his friend, but not his in any romantic sense. At least, not yet. That night, as Zachary lay in his hotel bed, he could not sleep. The walls between the rooms were thin, and he could hear small sounds from Zara's room next door, the creak of her bed, the soft pad of her footsteps on the floor. He thought about how close she was, just on the other side of that wall, and realized that his feelings for her had gone far beyond admiration or friendship. He was falling in love with her. If he was being honest with himself, he had been falling in love with her since that first day in the church. The next morning, they went to the cattle auction. They spent hours examining the livestock, looking for healthy animals with good breeding potential. By the end of the day, they had purchased 18 head of cattle, a mix of cows and heifers, all young and healthy. It would strain their resources to transport them back to Hill City, but it would be worth it for the future of the ranch. "We will need to hire a couple of hands to help drive these cattle back," Zachary said. "It is a 3-day journey, and we cannot manage 18 head by ourselves." They found 2 cowboys who were between jobs and willing to work for fair wages. The journey back to the ranch was slower and more challenging than the trip to Prescott had been, but they managed it without losing any cattle. By the time they arrived back at the ranch, everyone was exhausted but satisfied. They had made a major investment in the future of the ranch, and it felt like a real accomplishment. After paying the 2 cowboys and sending them on their way, Zara and Zachary spent the rest of the day getting the new cattle settled and making sure they integrated well with the existing herd. By evening, they were both bone-tired but happy. "We did it," Zara said as they stood by the corral watching the cattle graze in the fading light. We actually expanded the ranch. You did it, Zachary corrected. This was your idea, your ranch, your success. Our success, Zara said, turning to look at him. I could not have done any of this without you, Zachary. You know that, right? We make a good team, he agreed. We do, she said softly, and there was something in her eyes, a warmth, an invitation that made his heart beat faster. He took a step closer to her, closing the distance between them. Zara, I need to tell you something. What is it? When I walked into that church 3 months ago, I had no idea that my life was about to change completely. I had no idea that I was about to meet someone who would become so important to me. He paused, gathering his courage. I am trying to say that somewhere along the way, working beside you, getting to know you, I have developed feelings for you. Strong feelings. And I understand if you do not feel the same way, if this is uncomfortable for you. I value our friendship and our working relationship too much to let anything jeopardize it, but I had to tell you the truth. Zara's eyes widened, and for a moment he feared he had made a terrible mistake. But then she smiled, a slow, beautiful smile that lit up her whole face. Zachary Logan, do you really think I have not noticed the way I feel around you? Do you really think I spend hours cooking nice dinners and wearing my better dresses for no reason? I thought you were just being friendly. I was being friendly, she said, taking a step closer to him. But I was also hoping you might see me as more than just your employer or your friend. I have been falling in love with you since the day you handed me that money in the church, since you believed in me when no one else did, since you chose to stay here and build this ranch with me instead of taking that job in Tucson. You love me. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. I do, she said simply. I love you. Zachary reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. I love you too, Zara. I love your strength, your determination, your kindness, your intelligence. I love everything about you. He leaned down and kissed her, a soft, tentative kiss that quickly deepened as she wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer. It was a kiss that held months of growing feelings, of stolen glances and unspoken words, of hope for the future. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and smiling. So what do we do now? Zara asked, her hands still resting on his shoulders. I suppose we continue doing what we have been doing, Zachary said. Running this ranch together, building a future together. Although now we can do it as more than just business partners. I like the sound of that, Zara said. Over the following months, their relationship deepened. They continued working together on the ranch, but now there was an added dimension to everything they did. They could hold hands as they walked the property, could steal kisses in the barn when no one was watching, could sit close together on the porch in the evenings. The work was still hard, the challenges still significant, but facing them together as a couple made everything feel more manageable, more meaningful. The new cattle thrived, and by the time winter arrived, the herd had grown even more through natural breeding. They spent the winter months doing maintenance work, fixing equipment, reinforcing structures, and planning for the spring. And they spent long evenings together by the fireplace, talking about their dreams for the ranch and for their future together. One evening in late February, as they sat together on the sofa in front of the fire, Zachary said, I have been thinking about something. What is that? Zara asked, snuggled against his side. About us, about our future. He shifted so he could look at her properly. Zara, I know we have not been together that long in the official sense, but I have known for months now that I want to spend my life with you. I cannot imagine a future that does not have you in it. I want to build this ranch with you, grow old with you, face whatever comes with you by my side. Zara's eyes were shining. What are you saying, Zachary? He slid off the sofa and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. I am saying that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. I am saying that you are my best friend, my partner, and the woman I want to marry. Zara Bennett, will you marry me? Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Yes. Yes, of course I will marry you. I love you so much, Zachary. He pulled a simple gold band from his pocket, a ring he had bought during a quick trip into Hill City the week before. It was not fancy or expensive, but it was honest and true, like their relationship. He slipped it onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the firelight danced around them. They were married 6 weeks later in the same church where they had first met. It was a small ceremony, with just a few friends from town and some neighboring ranchers attending. Zara wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, and Zachary wore his best suit. The preacher who performed the ceremony spoke about the mysterious ways of God, about how prayers are answered in unexpected ways, about how love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. As they stood before the altar, saying their vows, Zachary thought back to that day 8 months ago when he had walked into this church seeking shelter from a dust storm. He had found so much more than shelter. He had found his purpose, his home, and the love of his life. And as Zara looked up at him with tears of joy in her eyes, saying the words that bound them together, he knew that every choice he had made, every mile he had traveled, every hardship he had endured had led him to this moment, to this woman, to this life. After the ceremony, they held a small reception at the ranch. Neighbors brought food and well wishes, and there was music and dancing in the yard as the sun set over the hills. It was a simple celebration, but it was perfect, filled with genuine happiness and community support. As the last guests departed and night fell, Zachary and Zara stood together on the porch of their home, looking out at the land that was now truly theirs together, bound not just by business partnership but by marriage and love. "Happy, Mrs. Logan?" Zachary asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Zara said, leaning back against him. "Thank you for walking into that church, for hearing my prayer, for being my answer." "Thank you for praying," he said. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay, a reason to believe in something bigger than myself." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars come out one by one over the Arizona sky, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They expanded the herd further, improved the buildings and fences, and earned a reputation for raising quality cattle. They hired a couple of permanent ranch hands as the operation grew, and they became known as fair but demanding employers who treated their workers with respect. Zachary proved to be not just a skilled ranch foreman but a wise business partner. His years of experience on various ranches gave him insights that helped them make smart decisions about breeding, grazing, and selling. Zara brought her intimate knowledge of the land and her fierce determination to succeed. Together, they were formidable, and the ranch reflected that. Gerald Cooper never gave up trying to buy the property. Every 6 months or so, he would send someone with a new offer, each one higher than the last. But Zara and Zachary always refused. The ranch was their home, built with their sweat and love, and no amount of money could make them give it up. There were hard times too. A drought in their 3rd year of marriage tested them, forcing them to make difficult decisions about culling the herd and rationing water. A harsh winter in their 5th year killed several cattle and nearly destroyed the barn. But they weathered each challenge together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each trial they overcame. And then, 6 years after their wedding, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and excitement. They spent months preparing, fixing up one of the spare bedrooms in the house as a nursery, making plans for how they would manage the ranch with a baby to care for. Their son was born on a warm spring morning, delivered by a midwife from town with Zachary present the whole time, holding Zara's hand and whispering encouragement. They named him Samuel, after Zara's father, and from the moment Zachary held his son for the first time, he felt a love so overwhelming it brought tears to his eyes. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered, looking down at the tiny face of his son. "He is," Zara agreed, exhausted but radiant. "He has your eyes. And your nose," Zachary said, smiling. Little Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. He was walking the property with them by the time he was 2, learning about cattle and horses and the land. When he was 3, his baby sister arrived, a beautiful girl they named Rose after Zara's mother. And 2 years after that, another son joined the family, a robust baby they named Zachary Jr. but called Zach. The house that had once seemed too large for just the two of them now rang with the sounds of children's laughter, with running feet and excited voices. The porch where Zara and Zachary had spent so many evenings talking and dreaming now hosted tea parties and games of tag. The barn became a place of exploration and adventure for their children, who grew up learning to ride horses and care for animals. As the children grew, so did the ranch. With the added motivation of providing for their family, Zachary and Zara worked even harder, and the Bennett Logan Ranch, as they had renamed it, became one of the most successful operations in the area. They were able to buy an adjacent property when it came up for sale, expanding their grazing land significantly. They built a new, larger barn and added more outbuildings. They invested in breeding stock and began raising horses as well as cattle. Through it all, their love remained the foundation of everything they built. Even with the demands of running a large ranch and raising 3 children, they made time for each other. They still took walks together in the evenings when the children were in bed. They still sat together on the porch, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still kissed each other good morning and good night, still said "I love you" every single day. Samuel Bennett, Jr., as they called him more formally when he got older, grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch and wanted to run it someday. Rose was spirited and intelligent, with her mother's determination and her father's steady calm. Zach was the adventurous one, always exploring and getting into mischief, but with a heart of gold. One summer evening when Samuel was 15, Rose was 12, and Zach was 10, the family gathered on the porch after dinner as they often did. The children were playing a game in the yard, and Zara and Zachary sat together on the porch swing watching them. "Do you ever think about that day in the church?" Zara asked, her head resting on Zachary's shoulder. "I think about it often," Zachary said. "How desperate you looked when I first saw you, how scared but determined." "I was praying for a miracle," Zara said softly. "I was asking God to save my ranch, to give me a way forward. I never imagined the miracle would be you walking through that door. I never imagined I would find the love of my life in a dusty church in the middle of a dust storm," Zachary said. "But I am grateful every day that I did." "Your prayer was answered that same day," Zachary continued, pulling her closer. "But what you did not know was that my prayer was being answered too. You never told me you were praying for anything," Zara said, tilting her head to look at him. "I did not realize it at the time," Zachary admitted. "But I had been searching for something for years, for a place to belong, for a purpose, for someone to love and build a life with. I just had not put it into words as a prayer. But God knew what I needed, and He led me to that church, to you, at exactly the right moment." "So we saved each other," Zara said. We did, Zachary agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. This was their life now, so different from what either of them had imagined all those years ago, but so much better than anything they could have planned. As the years continued to pass, the Bennett Logan Ranch became a legacy. Samuel took over more and more of the daily operations as Zachary and Zara grew older, proving himself to be a capable and innovative rancher. Rose married a kind man from a neighboring ranch, and they built a house on the far corner of the property, staying close to family while starting their own life. Zach, after a few years of adventuring and working on ranches throughout the West, returned home and became Samuel's partner in running the operation. Zachary and Zara, their hair now gray and their hands weathered by decades of hard work, spent their later years enjoying the fruits of all they had built. They took pleasure in watching their grandchildren. Samuel and Rose each had 3 children of their own, run and play on the same land where they had raised their family. They sat on that same porch, now well-worn and familiar, and remembered all the moments that had brought them here. The church where they had first met still stood in Hill City, though it had been repaired and improved over the years. Zachary and Zara made sure to visit it regularly, always sitting in the same pews where they had first spoken, always offering up thanks for the prayer that had been answered, for the life they had been given. One warm summer day, when Zachary was 72 and Zara was 69, they took a walk together around the property, something they still did as often as Zachary's aging knees would allow. They stopped at the top of a hill that overlooked the entire ranch, the house, the barns, the corrals, the grazing cattle, the creek winding through the cottonwoods. "Look at all of this," Zara said, her hand in Zachary's. "Look at what we built together." "It is magnificent," Zachary agreed. "But none of it, not the land, not the cattle, not the buildings, none of it matters compared to what we built here." He placed his hand over his heart. "The love we shared, the family we raised, the life we lived together, that is the real legacy." Zara turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I love you, Zachary Logan. I have loved you from that day in the church, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Zara Logan. You are my miracle, my answered prayer, my everything." They stood there together, 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, who had built a life from nothing but faith, hard work, and love. The sun was setting again, as it had done thousands of times since that first day they met, painting the Arizona sky in brilliant colors. Years later, when they both had passed, having lived long and full lives, their children and grandchildren gathered to remember them. They told stories about Zachary's kindness and wisdom, about Zara's strength and determination. They spoke about the love that had been so evident in every interaction between them, a love that had been the foundation of everything the family had become. And in the church in Hill City, the church where it had all begun, there was now a small plaque on the pew where Zara had been kneeling that fateful day. It read simply, "Here, a prayer was answered and a love story began." The Bennett Logan Ranch continued to thrive for generations, passed down through the family, a testament to what 2 people could build when they worked together, loved each other, and never gave up. The house still stood, expanded and improved but still recognizable. The barn where Zachary and Zara had stolen so many kisses still sheltered horses and cattle. The porch where they had sat countless evenings still welcomed family and friends. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings when the wind whispered through the cottonwoods and the cattle settled in for the night, people swore they could feel the presence of Zachary and Zara still there, still watching over the land they loved, still holding hands as they had done in life, still reminding everyone who lived there that the greatest wealth is not measured in land or cattle or gold, but in love, family, and faith. Samuel Logan, the eldest of Zachary and Zara's children, made sure that the story of how his parents met was told to each new generation. He wanted his children and their children to understand that sometimes the most desperate moments can lead to the greatest blessings, that prayers are answered in mysterious ways, and that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. On the 50th anniversary of Zachary and Zara's first meeting, before they had passed, the family had gathered for a huge celebration at the ranch. People came from all over the territory, friends, neighbors, business associates, and family. There was food and music and dancing, just like there had been at their wedding all those years ago. During the celebration, Zachary stood up to speak, his voice still strong despite his years. 50 years ago, I walked into a church during a dust storm, and I found a woman praying. I did not know it then, but that moment changed everything. That woman became my wife, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. She taught me what it means to be brave, to fight for what you believe in, to never give up. She gave me a home, a family, and a purpose. I am the luckiest man who has ever lived, and I thank God every day for leading me to that church, to her, to this life. Zara stood beside him, tears streaming down her face, and added, "And I thank God for answering my prayer in a way that was so much better than I could have imagined. I asked for help to save my ranch, and he sent me a partner for life. I asked for a way forward, and he gave me love, family, and happiness beyond measure." Our story started with a prayer in an empty church, and it has been answered every single day since. The crowd erupted in applause, and Zachary pulled Zara into his arms, kissing her as he had done thousands of times over the years, each kiss still filled with the same love and devotion as the first. Their children and grandchildren watched with misty eyes, understanding that they were witnessing something rare and precious, a love that had endured everything life could throw at it and had only grown stronger with time. In the end, the story of Zachary and Zara was not just a story about a cowboy and a woman in a church. It was a story about faith, about how sometimes when we are at our lowest point, when we have exhausted all our options and can only pray for help, God answers in ways we never expected. It was a story about love, about how two people from different backgrounds, brought together by chance or divine intervention, could build something beautiful and lasting. It was a story about perseverance, about how hard work, determination, and partnership could overcome any obstacle. But most of all, it was a story about the power of that single moment of connection, that instant when Zachary walked into the church and saw Zara praying, when their eyes met and something shifted in the universe, when two lives that had been separate became intertwined. That moment had rippled outward, affecting not just the two of them but their children, their grandchildren, their friends, and their community. One prayer, one answer, one act of generosity and faith had created a legacy that would last for generations. The Bennett Logan Ranch stood as a monument to what they had built together. But the real monument was in the hearts of all who knew them, in the stories that were told about them, in the love that their families shared. They had proven that miracles do happen, that prayers are answered, and that sometimes a chance meeting in a dusty church during a storm can change everything. As the years turned into decades and the decades into a century, the story remained alive. New generations heard about Zachary and Zara, about the cowboy who gave everything to help a stranger, about the woman who refused to give up even when all seemed lost, about the love that blossomed from an act of faith and kindness. Children were named after them. Their values were passed down. Their example was held up as proof that goodness and love still mattered in a hard world. The church in Hill City eventually became a historical landmark, preserved because of the story associated with it. Couples would come from far and wide to see the pew where Zara had prayed, to sit where Zachary had sat when he first offered her help. Some came seeking their own miracles, praying that their desperate situations might also be resolved. Others came simply to feel connected to a story that reminded them that love and hope still exist. And on quiet days, when the church was empty and the Arizona sun streamed through the windows, casting golden light across the worn wooden pews, it was easy to imagine them there still, Zara kneeling in prayer, Zachary standing respectfully behind her, that pivotal moment frozen in time. The moment when everything changed, when a prayer was heard and answered, when two souls found each other and began a journey that would last a lifetime and echo through eternity. This was the story of Zachary and Zara, of prayers and miracles, of faith and love, of a cowboy and a woman in a church, and of all the beautiful things that can happen when we open our hearts to the unexpected answers that life provides. It was a story that ended not with sadness but with joy, not with loss but with legacy, not with an ending but with a continuation, as their love lived on in the family they created, in the land they nurtured, and in the hearts of all who heard their tale and believed, perhaps for the first time or perhaps renewed, in the power of faith, the beauty of love, and the truth that sometimes prayers really are answered, often in ways more wonderful than we could ever imagine.